Are you ready to fight like a champion, not just in the courtroom, but in every facet of your life? Welcome to the Legal Athlete Podcast. I'm Jess Sargus, your host, high performance speaker, and coach for trial lawyers. With over 22 years as a trial attorney and legal exec, and an undefeated record as a former MMA fighter and boxer, I know what it takes to thrive in high stakes environments. I also know that in both the courtroom and the cage, you're only as good as your wins. That's why I'm here to help you develop a fighter's mindset, discipline, and strategies so you can master your mental game and execute under pressure to win more and burn out less. Every week, I fuse insights from elite athletics, legal pros, and cutting-edge neuroscience and sports psychology to help you perform at your peak under pressure. So whether you're looking to reinvent your practice, your mindset, or your life, this is the podcast for you. It's time to become a legal athlete. Let's get it. Welcome back to the Legal Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Jess Sargus, and today we are diving into the mindset, resilience, and elite performance strategies that allow people to conquer the highest peaks, both in mountains and in life. My guest today is the definition of unstoppable. Lisa Thompson is a world-class mountaineer, a breast cancer survivor, a high-performance coach, and a sought-after keynote speaker. She is the second American woman to summit K2, the second highest and deadliest mountain in the world. She's completed the legendary 7 summits, scaling the highest peak on every continent, including Everest. And Lisa was the co-leader of Anything is Possible, the first all-women summit of Cholatse in Nepal. Beyond her achievements in the mountains, Lisa is the founder of Alpine Athletics, where she coaches elite endurance athletes to reach their peak potential. And if that wasn't enough, she's also the author of Finding Elevation, Fear and Courage on the World's Most Dangerous Mountain, where she takes readers inside her incredible journey to the top of K2. So to sum it up, Lisa knows what it takes to push past fear, build an unshakable mindset, and perform at the highest level, even when the stakes are life and death. Today, we're going to break down the mental performance skills that allow her to succeed, how she turns fear into fuel, and what's next on her horizon. So Lisa, welcome to the Legal Athlete Podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you for that fantastic introduction. Sometimes when I hear all those things at once, I'm like, oh my gosh, who is this person? Doesn't seem right.
The person is you, and you're amazing. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me and to share your insights with listeners. I guess my first question for you is, you've summited some of the most dangerous peaks in the world, including, like I said, K2 and Everest. What mental performance mastery skills do you think have been essential for you in successfully making those climbs?
Yeah, I realized pretty early on that mountaineering and high altitude mountaineering in particular are a combination of mental and physical fitness, that you can't just be strong physically and expect to climb to 8,000 meters and back safely. And so before I went to Everest in 2016, I employed a performance coach so that I could improve my mental game. And some of the tactics and skills that she taught me then, I still use today. I'm just returning from a climb in Mexico, actually, and still use some of those skills. So for me, it starts when I'm at home. It starts with me really studying and getting intimate with my goal and learning the characteristics of the mountain, as well as the hazards. So is avalanche a big risk? Is rockfall something to be concerned about? And really starting to understand the impact of those hazards and how I feel about them. And is there any way that I can mitigate those or make them less impactful to me? Um, that's sort of the characteristics of the mountain. And then I will also focus on what are the things that I'm worried about. Am I worried about running out of oxygen, dropping a mitten, getting cold, being dehydrated? What are all those things that I think could possibly be detrimental to me achieving my goal? And I'm very old school. I actually write them down on note cards and then I write a solution on the back of the note card. And I sort of study it because I want, if something like that happens, so take the example of being cold. If I'm worried about being frostbitten, I will note that my hands are cold, let's say, and my strategy is to add a layer. Nothing, no surprise there. Try to get as warm as I possibly can, wait 20 minutes, and if I can't get warm enough, then to descend. So by thinking about it ahead of time, I already have this game plan for how I'm going to handle these things if they happen in real time on the mountain. And I found that by having that strategy, it makes them less novel if they really do appear. So if something happens that I've thought about, I already know how I'm going to react to it and how I'm going to solve it in real time on the mountain. There are, of course, surprises, right? Weather, terrain, GI bugs, all sorts of things can pop up. And that is when I rely on things like mantras to really help me get through a situation. So I have a few very specific phrases that are really important to me that really elicit a strong emotional response, positive emotional response to me. And if things get difficult or I start to really get in my head or doubt myself, I'll rely on those mantras, which very quickly put me in a more positive frame of mind and help me to eliminate what can often be a very negative down spiral if things aren't going exactly as I have planned. So those are my biggest strategies, and I use them in business as well. It's one thing I love about mountaineering is that there's so much that's transferable from the mountain to real life, and they've gotten me through very, very difficult situations in the past.
That's really fascinating. And that's one of the reasons I think I was so excited to talk to you. I mean, we've had conversations before, but there's so many parallels also between how
Yes.
you approach climbing a mountain to how I would approach fighting, how I would approach the courtroom and getting ready for trial.
Yep.
You named a ton of them. I think your first steps when you're saying you assess the mountain and basically its strengths and weaknesses, and
Yep.
then against yours, that's watching tape in a fight. You're all right. What are they good at? Are they great at grappling, or how do I compare? And then you're talking about your note cards about evaluating what events might happen. I use a strategy in my mental performance training. It's the exact same thing. It's called E plus R equals O, is event plus response equals outcome. And that's
I love
just
that.
what you said, is pre-planning your response to something that is possible, that it might happen, so that in the moment, boom, you don't have to waste time. You don't have to get stressed or go down a spiral because you already know your response. And
Totally.
then I love your mantras too, that mental training. And what do you rely on when things go sideways? I use it over and over, but it's perennial good advice or good statement of fact, is Mike Tyson saying that everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Well, so you definitely might get punched in the mouth by
Yes,
something
I have been
unexpected
punched in the mouth
on the
before.
mountain,
Yeah.
and it's how do you react, and you
Yes.
return to that mental strength and that mental positivity. I love that. What's your, I mean, you don't have to, if it's personal, you don't have to go into, but what is a mantra that you use or that you've used in climbing a peak that's really helped you?
Yeah, I have a handful of them that are for different scenarios, right? There's some when I just need like a reset. I need to
Hmm.
stop thinking that I'm slow or cold or the backpack is too heavy or the train is too steep. And then I say I am strong. And I will often match that phrase with my movement. So I'll move one foot or one hand and say I am, and then take the next movement and say the word strong. And it's just depositing in your brain this very positive story about you and what you're capable of and how you're managing the situation that you're in. And I find that really useful to just bypass negativity and instead focus on something positive because often the negativity is not true. It's us making up a story because maybe we're having a bad day or we have expectations about how something could go and it's not. And it's very easy to let that just play on repeat and really have a negative effect on what you're capable of doing.
Yeah, I like that. I like being forcing yourself to be aware of where your brain is going and then
Yes.
intentionally resetting and refocusing because you get to choose your perspective.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that approach to dealing with something that might be going sideways or something that's causing extra pressure.
Mhm.
I think it's very natural in that situation also to fear what might happen to you. It might be, a constant companion when you're climbing a mountain in these high stakes situations. So how else do you manage fear when you're on the mountain, and how can a high achiever use those same strategies either in life or in business?
Yeah. Fear is very interesting. I like that you said the word companion because I think it really is a companion. I think first, it's important to acknowledge when you're fearful. I am not of the mindset that you should just ignore it and pretend like it's not there because fear has a role in our lives. It's meant to keep us alive. It's meant to alert us of things that are scary or uncomfortable. And I want fear to always do its job. What can be difficult is if that fear response outweighs the situation or the likelihood of something detrimental happening. So I think about risk and fear. What I think about is what is the likelihood of something happening and what's the consequence of that happening if it does. So something may be very likely, right? I could be very likely to have an upset stomach after I've eaten some crazy food in Nepal. But the outcome of that is not, I'm not going to die, probably. There are other things like me falling when I'm on a fixed line is unlikely because I'm tied to a safety. There are multiple backup safety mechanisms in place. But if I do fall, the consequence of that is probably going to be great. So I first like to measure it that way. And then I like to sort of take fear along for the ride and be like, okay, we're going to hang out. I need you. I don't want you to go away, but I'm in control of the situation. And I'm going to use my awareness and logic and experience to assess how much fear is reasonable and helpful in a situation and what is too much and what is, in fact, going to be detrimental to me achieving my goal.
Mhm.
And so I like to think that I've made friends with fear over the years. We have this arrangement. We know how we work together. But I get to be in my logical brain gets to be in control of how much of a voice fear has.
I think that is so critical, particularly in high stakes situations. And I definitely understand fear being a companion in fighting too, because it's
Mhm.
very visceral bodily risk. I liked what you said though, just to draw out, I think the analogy of fear as a passenger, it's okay if it's a passenger. You just don't want it to be a backstreet driver, right? The
Yes,
the
100%.
they don't get to dictate what turn you make, but they can
Uh-huh.
be there. They can
Yes,
be a companion during the trip. They might even help you watch out for additional dangers that
totally.
might not see coming. But yeah, you never want them to reach over and grab the wheel.
Decide how you're going to navigate or how fast you're going to go. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think getting used to living in the presence of fear and doing what you need to do anyway is such a critical performance habit. And I think one of the biggest things I try to communicate to my coaching clients and also in speaking is that success is the result of all the little things that you do on a daily basis and all
Yep.
the little habits that you work into your life and your approach and your disciplined thoughts. What are some of the daily habits, mental or physical or both, that
Mhm.
you use or your clients use to build resilience and peak in performance, both when they're climbing mountains or in life or business?
Yeah. I in my coaching business have become more focused on mindset training and on how that affects our physical performance. And so one, there's so many, but I guess two that I rely on often are visualizations and meditation. I'll have my clients, for example, visualize themselves navigating effortlessly through a particularly different part of a route. I'll have them visualize themselves standing on the summit of a peak and feeling strong and confident. And, there's a study, remember where the study came from, but it had people like actually play a piano or think about playing a piano. And the end result was the same. They could both actually play a piano in the end because our visualizations are so strong. And I think in our culture, Western cultures, we often overlook that. We forget how strong we are mentally. And so adapting or adopting a technique like visualizations, I think is really key. And I also just rely on meditation. I joke that it took me 7 years to figure out how to meditate because I had just that brain that wouldn't stop and wouldn't shut down, which I think is a sign that there's a lot to be gained from slowing down and doing something like meditating. But now that that's a part of my morning routine and something I regularly practice, I notice when I don't do it. Like I notice that I'm just not as resilient. I'm not as able to manage or navigate all the chaos and things that come up in normal life if I haven't had even just 10 or 15 minutes of sitting quietly in the morning and meditating.
Yeah, it's something that I've gotten far more disciplined about starting my day with in the past several months, really.
Mhm.
Visualization has been a long time thing. I've used it in sports and in law, but meditation, it is a challenge
Hard.
to quiet the noise. But I
Yes.
think I think like you said, I find when I've meditated in the morning, it's so much easier for me to focus on
Mhm.
my most important tasks for that day. And like you said, to minimize the chaos
Yeah.
that I let seep in because I've had that intention setting basically through quieting the noise to start everything out. That's
Yep.
amazing. So helpful.
Um, it's so ironic to me how it's literally the simplest thing to do in the world. Like you just sit in a quiet, it doesn't even have to be a quiet space. You just sit and close your eyes. And it is so hard, like so hard for us to do. A few months ago, went to a 7-day silent retreat. So no talking. We would meditate for hours a day. And it is one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What prompted the 7-day retreat? You're like, I'm gonna conquer this peak next.
I think
Where
there was
because
an element of that, of like, this
yeah.
is going to be hard. I want to give it a try. And I also just wanted to see what happened if I was that quiet for a whole week. Like we didn't have access to phones. We were in silence all the time. We meditated and amazing things happened. Like I could remember my dreams, which I'm one of those people just can't remember most of my dreams. I could start remembering my dreams. I learned how important it is for me I want people to see me as an athlete And there was no way for me to do that, right? I couldn't tell them what I had accomplished in my life. And so I found myself like doing ridiculous runs during lunch in the hills, like just so people could see that I was active and fit. And I was like, "Wait, this is so much a part of my identity. And it's so important to me that other people see that." So that was a really big insight that I would not have had otherwise.
Amazing. Yeah. I think that is one of the things that I've found has helped me a lot in my meditation practice is not just the day-to-day and tasks and that, but really it helps so much to when you quiet the noise to figure out what's so important to you deep
Hmm.
down.
Yeah.
And like you were saying at the beginning, that your first object when you're going to climb a mountain is what's my goal here?
Uh-huh.
And I think understanding what's most important to us deep down helps us in so many ways to
Yeah.
identify what our goals really are.
Yeah. And then to stay true to those goals, right? To put our energy there, our focus, and not get distracted by extraneous things that aren't aligned with where we're trying to go.
Yeah, I'm amazed, really. Like again, it's things can be simple and still not be easy, right?
That is that is the definition of meditating. Yes,
Yep,
it is.
yep. Well, I am so impressed that you spent that 7 days really working on your meditating, and I kind of made a joke that it was a mountain to conquer, but there is that saying that the top of one mountain is the bottom of the next mountain.
Yes, yes,
So
very true.
after already achieving so much, what do you think is your next big goal, whether it's in the mountains or your professional life?
Yeah, professionally, my goal is to continue growing my coaching business. It's been so fun for me to talk about mountains all day long and to get to help other people accomplish their goals. I'm still climbing. I just came back from an all women's climb, not to the high level that I had been several years ago, but now I get to help other people do that. And I know it sounds cliche, but it really is an amazing feeling. I'm sure you experience it as a coach as well, to help to have a role and help someone accomplish something that they thought they couldn't accomplish otherwise. And that's just a really special thing. And for me, a huge part of why I keep coaching people. Climbing, from a climbing perspective, I have begun to get really passionate about helping other women grow in the mountains and experience and push themselves in those environments. And so, um, gosh, this year I think I have 6 all women's climbs planned, which is, and not, I mean, guys are great. It's not about that. It's just that something really magical happens when there's a group of women who are together in a wild place like the mountains, and it creates such a supportive environment. And I for many years climbed in mixed gender teams, and I felt like I was always on edge and always worried that I wasn't contributing enough or that I was going to be the weakest link in some way. And that was all self-inflicted. And all of that just goes away when I'm with a group of women where, it's okay to cry. It's okay to say I'm having a bad day. It's okay to say my period just started. Like, it's just so supportive. And I love that. And so especially when we climb in Nepal, will raise money for a women's organization in that country so that we can start to give back and support other women in those places and those cultures. So that's what I get excited about now, organizing those trips, helping other people learn more about themselves in the mountains is really what gets me up in the morning.
So great. That's so great. That reminds me, I was just talking with one of my friends. There was a study, and I just heard about it recently. Apparently, it was done in 2000, about the difference in the way that women in community acts
Oh, yeah.
on our brains versus men. And when women get together, we're caring for each other. And there's actually, this is my neuroscience bent on it. We tend to get releases of oxytocin, the bonding hormone, and
Uh-huh.
dopamine when women are together.
Interesting.
So you're actually flooding your brain when you're in a group of women with all of these positive and helpful and bonding neurochemicals at the same time that you're accomplishing something amazing, both in the
Yes.
climb and I love your giving back as well to the women of Nepal.
That's amazing. You'll have to link that study in the show notes so
I
I can,
will. I will.
I
I
would
will
love
send you the link.
to see
There's a
that.
there's a follow-up article. I think it was 2009 that one of the original researchers wrote a follow-up article about it. I'll send you both of those. But it was
Yeah,
fascinating to me
very
because
cool.
my friend and I we've just been talking a lot about the importance of women in community and supporting each other and to find
Yep.
that there's neuroscience behind
It
why it
supports
feels so
it.
good and it's such a
I
bonding
love that.
experience and that when men get together they do not have the same release of the
Interesting.
same neurotransmitters. So
Wow. That's
um,
really interesting. Yeah, I'd love to read that.
I will send that to you. I hesitate to ask because I think you've already given such great advice, but I like to make sure that I'm giving actionable advice to the listeners when I have experts on, particularly high performance experts like you, high performance athletes. So, what do you think are three things that you would advise someone who's trying to elevate their mindset?
Yeah. I think there is a big benefit to seeing challenges as opportunities. And I think that can sound cliche, right? But it is there's so many times in my life when something that I labeled as bad or negative or unwanted happened, like getting fired from a job, for example. And I thought, how am I ever going to get through this? And when you focus on staying positive, knowing what your goals are, who you are, and what your boundaries are, and you move through that, what I have always found is that there's opportunity on the other side of what you thought was a challenge or chaos or some kind of roadblock. Um, so that's one thing. I think surrounding yourself with people that are positive and uplifting and supportive and honest. I think that's another important thing. I want to be around people who call me out when I'm being ridiculous or overlooking something or not being fair. Um, those people lift me up and energize me. And I can feel the difference now when I'm around people who aren't like that. It just feels like my energy is getting drained very easily. So that helps me with my mindset. And I'm a very goal-oriented person. I'm sure your listeners are as well. Um, so always having a goal helps me stay sort of positive and it helps me, like I said earlier, kind of filter things out, right? If there's things that are distractions that seem fun and cool and shiny, but they're not really aligned with where you're going, just having a very narrow focus on that goal helps me to filter out the things that aren't as important to me right then.
Great. Super, super helpful. And I will have in the show notes a reminder about all three of those so that everyone can follow along and play along. One more question for you. This is my favorite question to ask guests, and I've taken this from Oprah, who got it from Gene Siskel. But at the end of the interview, I like to ask, what is one thing, whether it's about life, about mountaineering, or high performance and endurance, what is one thing that you know for sure?
What I know for sure is that really cool things happen when you release control. And I spent decades of my life controlling, defining, being laser focused on things. And it's not to say that you don't have goals, but when I have a goal and an intention, and then I just let go of how I accomplish that, is when really amazing things happen to me. And I need to remind myself of that because by default, I'm one of those people that wants a plan and control. And it's good for me to realize, and I think for all of us to realize that when you let go of that, amazing things can happen that you didn't even consider as possibilities.
Love it. I love it. The amazing things happen when you make your best plans and God laughs,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Because
Yeah.
sometimes like you're thinking at a lower level, and the where you're headed is much, much higher than that, but you just can't see that high yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. I love it. And I love being a part of a community where, again, we can be honest. And I love getting feedback from people who love you enough to know you can do better. I think
Yeah,
that's
that's a really good way
amazing.
to put it, Jess. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
that's so great. Well, I think you are one of those people, and I'm so happy that we've met, and we are colleagues here in
Yes.
building amazing things. And I'm so grateful that you were able to be here on the podcast with me today.
Me too. Thank you for having me. I feel like there's a lot more we could talk about.
There's a ton. I know we're tight on time today, but before we go, I want to make sure that all the listeners know how to find you. If they want to work with you, if they want to learn more about either your Alpine athletics company or getting you to speak to their groups longer
Yeah.
than today. So how do they find you?
Yeah, so I my websites are lisaclimbs.com and alpineathletics.net. You can go to one and link to the other. I'm most active on Instagram, and that is Lisa Climbs and Alpine Athletics. So if people want to know more about coaching, if you're getting ready to climb or doing some sort of big endeavor that you haven't done before, I'd love to chat about how I can help you get ready mentally and physically. And I love speaking to audiences about resilience and navigating change too. So I'd love to hear more.
Awesome. Awesome. And are your women's climbs, your six women's climbs, are they full yet, or are you still open to having
There,
participants?
there are two climbs of Mount Baker, which is a 10,000-foot mountain in the Seattle area. Those are not yet full. Those are this summer. So if you are an avid hiker and you want to try mountaineering, these are both beginner peaks. If you want to try mountaineering, it'd be a great opportunity to learn if that's something you want to pursue more. And I'd love to chat, even if you're not sure, but it sounds a little interesting. Let me know and we can schedule some time to chat.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Lisa. I
Pleasure.
appreciate you sharing all of your insights with the audience, and I hope I will have you back again one day
Yes,
as well.
let's do
We'll
that.
get
I would love
even
it.
deeper into it.
That sounds great. Thanks so much, Jess.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me on the Legal Athlete Podcast. If you're ready to take your mental game to the next level, let's connect. Want me to speak to your group or team? Or are you ready for one-on-one trial fight camp coaching to perform at your best when it matters most? Reach out to me with a direct message on LinkedIn or through my website at thelegalathlete.com. Until next time, remember that the best version of yourself isn't some future version. It's the you who makes your daily choices. So make great ones. Make the ones that keep you on that champion fighter journey, building a record and a life you love.